Hi everyone, today I'm talking about Parade, which is a small box card game designed by Naoki Homma, and this one's published by Z-Man Games. This one came out in 2007, so it's got quite a few years behind it now and accommodates 2 to 6 players. Now I'm always on the lookout for a new card game because I tend to find myself gravitating towards the same ones, because although I feel that there's a lot of good card games out there, I feel there are very few great card games that stand the test of time and repeated plays. So I was recommended this one by my friends over at the Back of the Shelf podcast. So I'd recommend checking those guys out. And here are my thoughts on this one. So this one has some pretty interesting concepts behind it, and does something a little bit differently and outside the box. So, as you can probably see by the box art here, this one is set on the Alice in Wonderland fairy tale. So you've got all the characters here from the story. You've got the Alice herself. You've got the Mad Hatter. You've got the rabbit and all the different characters from the story. Now, to set up, you're going to have a kind of row in the centre of the table like this, and as you can see, the anatomy of the cards is basically 2 bits of information. The first part being the actual artwork itself, or the colour, or the suit, if you want to put it that way, and the second one being the number here, because each of these different suits is numbered from 0 to 10, and there's 6 different colours in total. Everybody is going to have a hand of 5 cards, and their turn is going to consist of playing one of those cards onto the back of this row here, taking quite a few things into consideration when doing so. So the objective of the game is to get as few points as possible. So it's one of those golfing style games where you do want to try and limit how many points or how many cards you're taking, because as I said, the lowest amount of score, or the lowest score at the end, is going to determine who the winner is. So let's have a look how the actual game plays out itself. So as I said, you've got 2 different bits of information here. The first part being the number, the second part being the colour itself. And that's important because when I play a card, let's say for example I play this 3 dodo card here, the 3 will determine how many cards I skip over. So this one here, 3, it'll be 1, 2, 3, meaning that these 3 cards are ignored for this turn. Then everything else that's either a matching symbol or a matching colour, or equal to or lower to that card, is going to be taken into my scoring area for endgame scoring. So in this example, so the first 3 will be skipped. There's no other dodo cards, but there is a 1 here and a 1 here, which means that these will go face up in front of me for endgame scoring. Then the row would shift up and it would go on to the next player. Now, of course, if there was another dodo symbol, as long as it's ignoring those first 3, then I would have to take those cards as well. And then after that, I'll be drawing back up to 5 cards. So as you can probably see from this, the 0 cards aren't going to let you skip over much, but will obviously make you take any other 0 card and any other matching symbol. So it's a good way to collect cards of the same type if you want to do that, but the chances are you probably won't want to do that. So you want to be playing things at the right time to make sure that you are not scoring many points. And another big part of this game is actually how the game scores in the first place. So you might think that you'd score points based on the number of here, but that's simply not the case. So the scoring is going to be quite interesting because every player who has the maximum of a certain suit is automatically going to flip all their cards face down, and everybody else who's got or equal amount is also going to put their cards face down. But anybody who's got fewer than the most player is going to have cards or that matching suit face up in front of them like this. So let's say these were the rabbits. These are also the rabbits. Then these cards are only going to be worth 1 point each, whereas the ones in stacks fewer than the biggest is going to be worth the maximum value of the points here, so the face value. So this one would be 2 points, which of course is not a good thing because you want to have the fewest points possible. And that's going to happen for every single suit. So you've got 6 different suits, so you can you can imagine that there's a big potential for taking a lot of points if you do not play correctly. So I do quite like this decision process about when are you going to take these cards. You want to have the most because you don't want to, you don't want to be scoring those big cards if you have, a 10 in your hand, for example. But you don't want to have the most because they're still worth a point each, which is obviously not the objective of the game. So striking that balance is quite taxing. And knowing when to, or managing your hand in the first place is an interesting decision because, the 10s are going to be good because they're going to let you skip over so many cards, and you can try and obviously maybe force people into playing a matching card eventually and taking those as points, which again is not a good thing. So yeah, this does have some quite back to front mechanisms, but still is pretty pretty low in terms of its rules complexity and rules overhead. So a straightforward game, but with a pretty novel concept and some pretty innovative and fresh mechanisms, especially for a game that's 13 or 14 years old at this point. So let's talk about how I feel about the game in its entirety. So, of course, decision-wise, this one does have some good ones because you are always limited to your hand of 5 cards, and you're always going to be bearing in mind what you've got in front of you for your scoring, and obviously trying to get as few points as possible by doing so. You've got to know when to play these cards so that you can take as few cards as you can. Knowing when to pull that trigger and maybe take that brunt of those cards that you're going to take. Because you could be just kind of giving yourself another turn to try and weather the storm and basically take the worst or the best of the worst options at any time. And I really like these games that put you in a position of not wanting to play a single card. I think those agonizing and taxing decisions are what makes small card games really shine for me, and I really do look for that in games like this. So I love that idea where you have a perfect lineup of scoring cards. But you're happy for the game to end now, but you're going to have to keep playing because the game does not end until one player has at least one of each suit in their scoring area, or until that deck runs out. So there is some really interesting and compelling decisions here that are still, they're not overly brain burnery, but they still are extremely meaningful and will put you in difficult positions. And I think for a game like this, it's a small card game that takes. I think the box says 45 minutes, but I would highly doubt that it would ever take that long. From my experience, it takes half that. So I think it's going to be a particularly long game if you do get to that full time stamp. And I would always suggest that this is going to take a lot shorter than that. So yeah, in terms of meaningful decisions and the actual time investment, I think the game does a really good job of that. Also, in terms of the balance, it's a really well balanced game. Of course, you've just got the 6 different suits, numbered from 0 to 10. Yes, you're going to have a bit of luck in the draw, but it's all about managing your hand. So I don't think you could ever, feel like you're getting shafted because of the cards you've drawn. Even though, I suppose in particularly bad examples that might be the case. But overall, I think you're going to have to work with what you've got, and everybody's going to be in that same position. High cards are good because they're going to let you skip so many cards. Lower cards are also good because if you have them and somebody has and somebody has more cards than you, then you're only going to be scoring the lower amount of points in the end. So they all have their own advantages. So, and I do like that the fact that 10s aren't particularly more powerful and 1s aren't particularly more powerful. So there is a good striking of the balance there where every card is good in the right situation. Mechanically, I think there's some really innovative ideas here. Not only the scoring system in the first place, the person with the most cards is going to score 1 for each, where everyone else is going to score the full impact of the points. But also this card jumping system, I've never seen anything like it, and I love games, when I get games to the table that are unprecedented and don't have anything, even similar to this one. And I could be wrong, there could be another game that uses this mechanism, but I personally haven't seen it. So I do like that, always looking for new ideas. The uptime is good, while there is some, relatively taxing decisions, it's not AP prone. You're always going to be head down in the game. It's going to tick along nicely. You're always going to be engaged because, again, it's one of those games about spinning lots of plates and keeping things perfectly balanced so that you are, scoring as few points as possible. And I think these games that are tactical will keep you on your toes and keep you engaged throughout. And that kind of ties into the replayability of the game itself. I find that games in this vein either have a very short shelf life or really do stand up to repeated plays. And I think because this one is so engaging and you are going to be balancing those, from that score from start to finish, you're not going to lose interest, you're not going to drift off. You're always going to be, head down in your cards, thinking about what can I play here to weather this storm. And And for that reason, I think this game does stand up extremely well to repeated plays. I think it's going to be one of those games that you can whip out to anybody. It's simple and easy to digest, yet still has some of those interesting decisions, which is what I'm looking for. So I can't fault it in terms of its replayability. Although you're technically doing the same thing, you're always going to have to react to the current state of play, and I do really like that. Aesthetically, I think this game looks wonderful. The artwork is extremely charming. You can clearly see what these different suits are. There's no kind of blurring the lines here, or well illustrated, great numbers, and great card stock as well. So yeah, no complaints at all about the not only the artwork but the components. I think this game looks wonderful. I love the box art. You get a nice scoring card here, which I don't think is entirely necessary, but it's nice that they did take that consideration if you want to monitor your scores as you play more and more games. But yeah, in terms of the production, artwork, etc., 2 thumbs up for me. Love the way this game looks, and I think it's going to be a big draw to bring people into playing this one and kind of lower that obstacle that some people are intimidated by, kind of number-based card games. Setup and teardown time is an absolute breeze. You've just got a deck of cards essentially as your components. Give them a shuffle. You put 6 cards out in the table to start with. Everybody else gets 5 cards, and then it's just a matter of playing cards and drawing back up. So in terms of the, how easy it is to get to the table in relation to the setup and things, it's certainly not going to be a barrier. The sense of progression is good in this game because, as I mentioned again, it is about balancing your cards throughout, always considering what other people have got. So it doesn't feel like you are, just doing the same thing over and over again, even though you essentially are, you are always kind of playing the state of the table. And I think that lends itself to a great kind of climax, because the actual speed of the game, or when the game ends, is almost depicted by, or kind of dictated by, the players themselves. Because, if you're in a good position and you've only got 1 card left to collect, then you can get one and potentially score that way and shaft all the other players. Additionally, on the last go around, you're only going to have 4 cards in your hand, and you're going to choose 2 of them to go into your final scoring and 2 of them to go back into, or to be discarded essentially, which can be another important factor and can swing the points quite a bit. So there's that little bit of simultaneous play at the end, which is quite a fun little add-on. Scalability. This game does go from 2 to 6. I don't really see a big issue with playing any different player count. I think it's going to work well. I think optimally you're going to be playing best at maybe 3 or 4 players. But again, I would not hesitate to play this at any player count, because turns are quick. Maybe the 6 player, playing with 6 players is going to be a bit more chaotic, but still you are just reacting to what's in front of you. So not going to be a big drawback, and it's going to scale quite well. Comparisons, there's a lot of these golfing style games where you're trying to get as few points as you can. Games like 6 Nimmt come to mind, or there's these kind of queue-based games like Guillotine and Beastie Bar. But this one is a bit more deterministic. I think it's there's a bit more autonomy on your actions, and the hand management shines through a bit better for me, rather than just playing a card and seeing what happens kind of thing. With that more kind of element of chaos. This one gives you a bit more autonomy, and it feels like you are taking meaningful decisions, even though sometimes the decisions might be making the best of a worst bunch. I do like that feeling, and I like the general ambience and vibe of the game. It's just something a little bit different. So yeah, I do like that, and you're going to have some moments where people are playing cards and taking a bunch of cards that they don't want, and that is always a fun thing. Yes, so overall, Parade is a fantastic little filler game that I'm highly impressed with. I'm always looking for a card game, and Parade gives me everything I'm looking for. Yes, it does remind me of games like 6 Nimmt, but it is certainly different enough to warrant owning both of those. And if anything, this is going to prolong the life of 6 Nimmt, because again, I always find myself going to the same games, which makes me generally lean towards trying new things, and then those new things are never as good as 6 Nimmt, so we always go back to them. Whereas Parade is just pretty much an equally as good alternative. Still a similar vibe, but this simple card hand management system where you're skipping the cards, and the score mechanism I just absolutely love. It's certainly different. It's got a different feel to it. Beautifully presented. Extremely low rules overhead. but still some taxing decisions, which is everything I'm looking for. It ticks all the boxes for me for a small card game. That is Parade. I highly recommend you check this one out if you're looking for a mainstay card game for your group that scales well, with a lot of fun, and it's just a little twist and there's some small twists and turns on your traditional card game formats. So yeah, highly recommend this one. This one certainly gets my shield of quality. Yeah, strongly endorse this one. This is Parade by Z-Man Games. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.